Saquon Barkley is officially a free agent, and there are rumors that he may not return to the New York Giants after this season. But welcome to the channel. If you're new here, consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video if you do enjoy it. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so if you are new, be sure to hit that button. But the Giants had a fairly good season, their best in a fairly long time, and Saquon Barkley was the catalyst for their success this year. Barkley set a career high with 1,312 rushing yards, and he also added in 10 touchdowns and 338 yards on the receiving end. And it was absolutely fascinating to see Saquon battle back from 2 injury-riddled seasons and put together what he did this year. In 2020, only 2 weeks into the season, Saquon tore his ACL and his MCL, only being able to get 25 touches on the season before the injury happened. And after that injury, people were wondering if he was ever going to return to how he was as a rookie and how he was in college at Penn State. An absolute freak of nature who has a ton of explosiveness and athleticism. People were wondering if that would ever return again. But Saquon battled back in 2021, but you could tell he was not 100% during the season. And you combine that with the fact that he suffered an ankle injury, he missed a few games, and the Giants offense really didn't know how to utilize him, and he did not have a great bounce back year in 2021. But going into this season, Giants fans had a lot of hope that Saquon would return to his rookie form with having 2 years off from his ACL injury and a new head coach in Brian Daboll who would be able to utilize his skills more efficiently. And I saw this comeback from Saquon happening in training camp when he looked really good in the Daboll offense. So Saquon had a great year, and you combine that with the fact that the Giants really didn't have any other weapons on that entire offense. I think it's pretty astounding with what Saquon was able to achieve this year. The Giants relied on him so heavily, and the defenses they were going against only really had to worry about one player, and yet he was still able to have so much success this season. And because of that, Saquon was named one of the AP Comeback Player of the Year finalists. Geno Smith and Christian McCaffrey is his competition for the award, but I think Saquon has a very good shot to win this. Christian McCaffrey had a great season, but he's also on the 49ers with a loaded roster and a great play caller. If you put Saquon Barkley on the 49ers, I think he's having the same, if not more, success than CMC did this year. And then Geno Smith, I think it was a very fun story with what he was able to do with the Seahawks this year and bringing them to the playoffs. But I personally believe Saquon was way more impactful and important to that Giants team than Geno Smith was to the Seahawks. But regardless if Saquon wins the award or not, he had a great year and he's in line for a new contract. He was playing on the 5th-year option this year for the Giants, and now they have to start coming to terms with a new deal before Saquon hits the open market. After the Giants lost to the Eagles in the playoffs, Saquon was asked multiple questions about his contract situation and what he expects from the Giants this offseason, and we got a lot of details on what Saquon Barkley wants in a contract from the Giants and if they're going to be able to grant those requests. The New York Post asked him if he would be mad if the Giants franchise tagged him and they could not reach a long-term deal, and Saquon said, "I think it would upset anybody," which is a very fair response from Saquon. I don't think any player in the NFL likes when the franchise tag is placed on them. There's no long-term security, and if Saquon was to get hurt on that franchise tag, maybe the Giants don't even re-sign him for a long-term deal, and then he's pretty much screwed out of millions and millions of dollars. So another question he was asked is how much he wants to make and if he wants to reset the running back market. And Saquon said, "I'm not really too concerned about resetting any markets. I know what I was on pace to do, but having 2 years filled up with injuries and having a season not performing to the level I know I can perform, which is last year, doesn't help." So he seems very level-headed, that he knows his production and how elite he has been for a couple of seasons in the NFL. But on the other side of the coin, he knows that he's dealt with some injuries some seasons, and other seasons he may have underperformed. It's been reported that Saquon was offered a multi-year deal worth $12 million a season, but he reportedly declined the offer and definitely wants more money than that per season. It seems like he wants around the same money that Christian McCaffrey got when he got $16 million per season, so I think the Giants are going to have to award him something similar to that if they want to retain him. Joe Shen was also asked about Saquon, and he said, "Listen, Saquon has done everything we've asked him to do, and he's a good football player. Positional value, we'll get into how we want to build this team and allocate our resources. That's what it will come down to." So he was not very committal one way or the other if they were going to try to get a long-term deal with Saquon or not, but I find it very hard to imagine that they will not at least try to get a deal done with Saquon. But there is some belief that the Giants will not be able to retain Saquon and they're not going to be able to come to terms on a contract, and some betting sites have already made some odds on where Saquon will go if he cannot stay with the Giants. According to Sportsline odds makers, the Miami Dolphins have the top odds right now to acquire Saquon Barkley in free agency. They're plus 300, followed by the Buffalo Bills, who are plus 400, and then the Chicago Bears, who are plus 500. If Saquon somehow did hit the open market, I think it would be fascinating to see him on the Miami Dolphins with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I have no idea if the Dolphins will be able to make enough cap space to be able to get Saquon. Right now, they're over the cap by a few $1,000,000, but if they make some trades, make some cuts, which every team usually does, they'll be able to get under the cap. And is that enough to sign Saquon? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as I'm making this video, I find it very unlikely that Saquon is able to hit the free agent market and he's not going to be a Giant next season. He was such a huge part of their offense this year. I cannot see them moving on from him and starting from scratch on that side of the ball. And on top of that, the Giants have the third most cap space in the league with around $54 million. So who's really going to outbid the Giants for Saquon unless they don't want to pay him $16+ million, which is a possibility, I guess. And Barkley has also been asked so many times if he wants to return to the Giants, and he says he wants to be a Giant for life. He also said, I couldn't imagine that being the last time being in a Giants uniform, but that is the nature of the business. I can't control any of that. It comes with it. I've been vocal about how I feel. I'm excited for the future no matter what happens. So unless this regime for the Giants really does not value running backs whatsoever and do not want to pay them, I think Saquon Barkley will be back for the Giants next year on a long-term deal. Saquon wants to be there. He does not want to leave. The Giants have a ton of cap space. They can sign him to a long-term extension. And he was a huge part of their offense, and they cannot afford to let him leave, or their offense is literally starting from scratch and they have no weapons at the moment. You combine all those factors into one, and I think there's a really good chance Saquon is back for the Giants next year. But for whatever reason, if Brian Daboll and the Giants GM do not value running backs and he does hit the open market, I think things could get very interesting this offseason. That's really the only thing that gives me pause that Saquon won't be back next year. You gotta look at the background of Daboll and Shane and how the team that they were part of ran. The Buffalo Bills have been notoriously known the last few years for not having a great running game and relying on Josh Allen so much to carry them on the ground as well. This current regime for Buffalo has been really stingy with paying running backs and trading for them. The Bills had a lot of rumors this season that they were going to go out and trade for Christian McCaffrey, but they did not want to allocate those resources to trade and pay for him. However, the Bills have drafted running backs pretty frequently. I mean, in 2020, they took Zach Moss in the 3rd round, and then this past year, they took James Cook in the 2nd round. But as far as retaining running backs and paying them, that has not been a theme that this regime has done for Buffalo. So that would be the only thing that gives me a little bit of worry if I was a Giants fan, that this regime for the Giants does not value running backs like that. I mean, there's not many teams in the NFL that nowadays would pay $15+ million a year for a running back. Their value has just diminished so much over the years with the injuries that some of them faced, and then the fact that you can find so many good running backs late in the draft and not pay them a whole lot for 4 or 5 years. But maybe they didn't adopt that same philosophy, or maybe it's changed when they see how important Saquon was to their offense. I'll be keeping a close eye on this one, but I do think the Giants will be smart and retain their best player on their offense. The terms of that contract and the years are unknown at this point, obviously, but I do think in the end they will find an agreement. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. But let me know what you think of Saquon Barkley and his season this year, and if you think the Giants should retain him and for how much money, or if you don't think the Giants should retain him and your reasoning behind it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.